Today we're getting into the latest Tesla news, including the reformed EV tax bill that includes Tesla's passing the Senate, higher Cybertruck pricing confirmed, Tesla selling their 3 millionth car, and Tesla's next factory location, so let's get into it. First up today, at Tesla's recent shareholder meeting, Elon Musk teased that they would be able to announce their next factory location by the end of this year. When he asked, "Where should we build it?" to the crowd, many of them suggested Canada. Elon responded saying, "We got a lot of Canada. I am half Canadian. Maybe I should?" Previously, in a Q&A with workers, Elon talked about a new factory, saying, "We are looking at sites, but we are considering some site options more broadly in North America, so including Canada and Mexico and the US as well." Now we're seeing that he is heavily hinting at Canada, and we received more information this week that Tesla is specifically lobbying in Canada for this purpose. Tesla disclosed that it is lobbying the Ontario government for a new factory in Canada. Tesla said in the filing, "Engage with the government and its agencies to identify opportunities for industrial and/or advanced manufacturing facility permitting reforms with the intent to increase the competitiveness of Ontario and its ability to attract capital investment through establishing approvals timeframes that are competitive with high-growth manufacturing locations in North America, while also working with government to identify or align incentives programs that could further increase the attractiveness of Ontario for industrial and/or advanced manufacturing investment." Woo! Tesla is specifically focused on getting permits quickly to avoid a situation like they had getting Giga Berlin underway. Long term, Elon talked about Tesla having 10 to 12 gigafactories, so even though we're still waiting for the true ramp of their latest factories in Texas and Berlin, they're already looking for their next site to hit their goal of 20 million EVs made each year by 2030. Next up today, the reformed EV tax bill, a big part of the Inflation Reduction Act, has passed the Senate. It passed with a vote of 51 to 50. The bill will go to the House next, quote, where it is expected to pass within the week and then to President Biden's desk. There's a lot to this bill, but the part that will affect EVs is, of course, the EV tax credit. The $7,500 tax credit will renew in January of 2023 and last until the end of 2032. The current tax credit had a cap of 200,000 cars per manufacturer, which is why Tesla and GM EVs have been ineligible for a credit for years now. Toyota exceeded that cap this quarter, and Ford and Nissan are on track to pass that number soon, so this change was definitely needed. The updated credit gets rid of that cap beginning in 2023, which means that all manufacturers have access to unlimited credits as long as they fulfill the other requirements of the bill. Additionally, instead of this tax credit only being applied to your tax liability the following April, quote, the credit can be applied upfront at the point of sale if purchased from a dealer. This will be a huge improvement since you were required to have a large tax liability in order for this to be worthwhile, and the savings weren't seen for some time. Now the savings can come off of the sale price at the dealer, although reportedly that aspect of the bill doesn't actually go into place until 2024. So apparently those buying in 2023 would still have to do a tax credit, but we'll wait to see the full details on that. Hopefully when it comes off at the dealer, it won't just be negated by dealer markups. There are many specific requirements to this bill, and the more people look into it, the more people are confused. The most obvious requirements are an income cap and an MSRP cap. MSRP for cars caps at $55,000, meaning, for example, for the Model 3 and Model S, the only car that would qualify would be the standard range Model 3 in theory. That's if Tesla keeps current pricing. For SUVs, trucks, and vans, the MSRP cap is $80,000. That would mean that all Model Y trims qualify, but the Model X is disqualified. For other companies like Rivian, it will be a few years before their cars qualify, since their cheaper trucks and SUVs that start under $80,000 will not be coming for a couple years. Rivian wanted this to be changed in the bill, but it passed the Senate without a change, so their trucks and SUVs will quickly be disqualified from $7,500 off come 2023. As for the income cap, the cap for an individual is making $150,000 a year and $300,000 a year for those filing jointly. Essentially, the government only wants this credit available to those that they deem as needing it on more affordable EVs. No tax credit on luxury cars or for those that make over $150,000 each, essentially. For a used EV, there's a new credit, but it will be fairly hard to achieve. It's a $4,000 credit on cars priced $25,000 or less and includes a lower income cap of $75,000 or $150,000 for joint filers. I say that it's tough to achieve because finding a compelling used EV under $25,000 is pretty challenging these days, but I'm glad to see some form of a credit in place for buying used. Those requirements are pretty straightforward, but from there is where it gets really confusing. Quote, new requirements include that the cars must be assembled assembled in North America, and that materials and critical minerals in the battery must come from the US or a country with a free trade agreement with the US. These requirements are intended to spur domestic manufacturing and more diverse supply chains for EV materials, which are currently heavily reliant on one country. This means that there's really no way to completely tell which cars qualify at this point until the guidelines are officially released. The mineral and material guidelines don't actually fully go into effect until 2024, so that could mean that a number of EVs qualify in 2023 but then are excluded come 2024. Some specifics outlined by Electrek are that if you have a signed purchase order or sign one before Biden signs the bill, possibly this week, and then have to wait for delivery of an EV assembled outside of North America, you can still qualify for the current credit. The same seems to apply to the assembly in North America. For manufacturers who don't qualify today, like Tesla or Chevy, you may want to wait to purchase until next year if you and the car qualify for the credit. I know, it's a lot. Now, there are various articles going around about this EV tax credit, and while some are exaggerating, the specifics in here don't seem to fully align with where the EV industry is right now. According to The Verge, no electric vehicles on the market today qualify for the new EV tax credit. They're exaggerating there, but they talk about how EVs run on batteries typically made in China. China has 76% of the battery market today, whereas the US has 8%. This bill would require batteries to have at least 40% of materials sourced from North America or a US trading partner by 2024 in order to be eligible for a $7,500 tax break. By 2029, battery components would have to be 100% made in North America. China is specifically on the list as a foreign entity of concern, which would mean that certain vehicles using batteries or materials or minerals from China would be ineligible for this credit if over a certain percentage. If I'm correct, I assume that means that come 2024, the standard range Model 3, the only Model 3 which currently qualifies under the MSRP cap, as shipped today with CATL LFP cells, will be then disqualified. That would only change if Tesla changed where the battery is sourced. Quote, there are only 72 EV models available for purchase in the United States, including battery, plug-in hybrid, and fuel cell electric vehicles. Of those models, 70% are ineligible for the tax credit when the bill passes. Now, this isn't all bad. Essentially, the goal of this bill is to push US automakers to become more independent of China and bring manufacturing of batteries to the US. According to Inside EVs, if a car manufacturer wants to produce EVs that will qualify for the credit, they'll have to work hard to comply with the language of the legislation. The goal would be for electric car makers selling EVs in the US to be building them in North America and sourcing raw materials and parts from within. According to Consumer Reports, quote, over the longer term, automakers will adjust, bring their EV and battery manufacturing supply chains to North America, and ensure that American tax dollars are going to support American jobs. So that's a good goal long term, and if this bill succeeds there, it will be worth it, bringing more EV manufacturing and the whole supply chain into the US. The funny thing here to note is that the vehicles must be assembled in North America, not the United States. Tesla already assembles their US shipped cars in the US, but other companies like Ford do assembly for cars like the Mach-E in Mexico. The upcoming Chevy Blazer EV will be assembled in Mexico. These big staples of American manufacturing actually assembling in Mexico. Not the United States, but they are fine under the bill as they only need to be assembled somewhere in North America. Now, on the other side of things, the minimum battery size to qualify for this credit is 7 kilowatt hours. For context, a Tesla at minimum typically requires 60 kilowatt hours, up to 100 kilowatt hours in the Model S and X. For a car to be fully electric, it needs a very large battery, but plug-in hybrids still qualify here for this full EV credit. Many argue that this bill will extend the time that automakers can keep making plug-in hybrids, since they will qualify for a full $7,500 credit much more easily. They have much smaller batteries, so it can be much easier to largely source them in North America as required. It's much harder for a fully electric vehicle to qualify, since sourcing much more battery is a lot more difficult and the infrastructure isn't in place yet. It's getting there, but likely will take longer than when this bill will require a high percentage of the minerals and materials to come from North America or a US trading partner. Quote, the legislation would pave the way for all car companies to enjoy incentives, but they would have to use a supply chain that does not currently exist. As pointed out by Nautilus on Twitter, breaking down this bill, the US has free trade agreements with quite a few countries, including major mineral suppliers like Canada, Australia, and Chile. Notably absent are nickel-rich Indonesia, the cobalt-rich DNC, and of course, Russia and China. We see Tesla regularly making battery supply deals in countries like Australia, so this could be a big factor in qualifying their EVs. For other companies, we're seeing US battery factories in their infancy, so many cars could qualify soon enough, assuming they can properly source the minerals, but according to John Bozzella, president of the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, a likely result of this bill, as currently constructed, is that a significant number of consumers will not be able to take advantage of this credit in the early years when it is needed most. We'll have to see what comes of this, but it's definitely not a simple buy an EV, get $7,500 off type of bill. As for which cars qualify, it's also pretty complex. At this point, everybody is guessing because the battery requirements are hard to find out specifically, and the rules change and get more aggressive over the course of this bill. According to Consumer Reports, cars that will qualify include the Cadillac Lyriq, if it's classified as an SUV, the Chevy Blazer EV, Chevy Bolt, Bolt EUV, Silverado EV when that comes out in certain trims, F-150 Lightning in certain trims, Mustang Mach-E, Nissan Leaf, Rivian R1S and R1T in certain trims that they'll make later, the Cybertruck if it comes in low enough, the Model 3 in certain trims, Model Y if classified as an SUV, and the VW ID4 only with 2023 plus models that will be made in Tennessee. For the list of cars not qualifying, you may recognize a lot of them as they have become very popular EV options. These include the Audi e-tron, Genesis GV60, Hyundai Ioniq 5 and 6, Kia EV6, Mercedes EQB, Nissan Ariya, Polestar 2, Subaru Solterra, Toyota BZ4X, and VW ID4 made outside of North America, as well as a whole list of EVs that exceed the price cap. Price-capped cars include the Hummer EV, certain F-150 Lightnings, multiple BMWs, the Lucid Air, Porsche Taycan, most Rivian trims, the Model S, Model X, and more. This is the best guess by Consumer Reports, but a graphic posted on Reddit also attempts to guess which cars will qualify. As you can see, for the 40% battery material clause and 50% battery component clause, they are guessing probably and maybe for most of these cars. Either way, there are still a number of compelling EVs that should qualify here. It will take some adjustments from various companies, including Tesla, but ultimately should lead to vehicles that qualify. What'll be interesting to see though is how much it truly matters for demand of different companies' vehicles. Tesla hasn't qualified for this credit for years now, and hasn't had a problem selling their cars that are more expensive and don't qualify for any tax credit. To a degree, a disqualified EV will be something that people won't want to buy, but how much of a degree remains to be seen. Some people see this bill as a win, because it's still an improvement over the previous one, which would have manufacturer capped many automakers by the end of the year. They also like the requirements because they should help bolster EV production all the way up and down the supply chain in North America. Others see it as having a lot of flaws, and truly something that won't be available on most EVs for some years. The fact that plug-in hybrids qualify will also hold back EV adoption and investment by companies. How do you feel though? Leave a comment below to let me know your thoughts. I'll be sure to keep you posted as to which cars qualify for real as we get more info in the coming months. Next up today, at Tesla's shareholder meeting this past week, Elon finally confirmed that the original pricing of the Cybertruck isn't going to stick. When Tesla originally announced the Cybertruck, they announced a rear-wheel drive model with a 250 plus mile range coming in at $39,900. Dual motor was $49,900 and tri-motor was $69,900. This pricing blew people away because at the time this was only a tiny bit more expensive than the cheapest Model 3. They would achieve these costs by scaling and using the crazy exoskeleton architecture of the Cybertruck. Since this announcement though, Tesla has raised their prices on all cars considerably. Other companies like Rivian and now Ford have also raised prices on their own electric trucks, and it has been clear for a while now that the pricing Tesla hoped for back in 2019 isn't going to be achievable in 2023 when it hopefully launches for real. Elon commented on this finally, saying, "Cybertruck pricing, it was unveiled in 2019 and the reservation was $99, actually $100. And a lot has changed since then. The specs and the pricing will be different. I know it's a little bit of bad news, but there was no way to anticipate the inflation that happened and various issues." Regarding the latest timeline for the Cybertruck, he said, "We are going to be installing production equipment in the coming months." This is something that has been obvious for a long time, but many hoped that Tesla would somehow keep the price lower. Now it's confirmed. I expect the Cybertruck to first launch with something like a quad motor model at $70,000 or higher. We'll have to see what happens, and I'll be sure to keep you posted. As for Tesla's overall growth, Tesla just announced that they recently produced their 3 millionth vehicle. Elon announced that they achieved this over the last few weeks and added, 10 years ago, we had made less than 3,000 cars. Now here we stand. 10 years later, year having made 3 million cars. Regarding where he sees Tesla growing toward, he added, "What about the next 10 years? I'll be surprised if it's not over 100 million in 10 years. Their growth has been incredibly impressive, so the question really is how much can they continue to scale up in the next few years with new factories? The Model Y will be a huge contributor to that number," and Elon further reiterated at this shareholder meeting that the Model Y is on track to be the world's highest selling car by revenue this year. By next year, it is likely to be the best-selling vehicle by volume. As pointed out by Electrek, Elon makes a lot of predictions, but his predictions for Model Y demand have definitely come true. In 2016, he said, "To be clear, the priority vehicle development after the Model 3 would be the Model Y, the compact SUV, because that's also a car that we expect to see demand in the 500K to 1 million unit per year level." That was 4 years before it was released, and many thought he was absolutely crazy to make these predictions, and other predictions in this regard have come true. We'll have to wait and see how his prediction of 100 million cars on the road in 10 years goes, but I wouldn't bet against it. Last up today, Tesla shared a teaser image of the Tesla bot called Optimus at their shareholder meeting. It was on a teaser image for AI Day number 2 coming up on September 30th, and the assumption here is that this image is of the Tesla bot's hands. If so, it is much more involved than the original teaser dummy shown at AI Day number 1. Elon said, "I suspect Optimus is going to be more valuable than the car long term. It will turn the whole notion of the economy on its head." It seems most people don't think Tesla will be anywhere close to a true Tesla bot, but Elon thinks that they have something exciting to show. Either way, we'll know for sure on September 30th. That's all the latest Tesla news for today, so in the meantime, if you want to see 10 ways to ruin your Tesla and mistakes to avoid, you can check out that video linked up here or in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.